You are listening to Book Clips, a mini podcast in which authors or narrators do readings from novels. Check out the show notes for the synopsis and buy links for this book.
This is a scene from Uprooting, written by Suzie Carr, narrated by Suzie Carr. Harper's animated reply caused Ivy's belly to tumble. Harper Ray did something to her, something that stirred her like no spell in the world ever had. Ivy lowered herself to her bed and smiled like a giddy girl, thinking back on Harper's wink and how it had turned her inside out with pleasure. Ivy had never been with a woman and could only imagine how intoxicating that woman's touch would be. Harper Ray intrigued her. She loved the way she cradled her guitar with her sexy arms. And how she nurtured it with a loving stroke, as Ivy imagined she would a woman she admired. How wonderful to be the one on the other end of that attention. As the minutes passed, desire swam in Ivy, a desire to be taken on a sensual journey by Harper Ray. She imagined herself in Harper's strong, capable arms. Closing her eyes, she caved into the intoxicating lure of Harper's lips as they warmed the delicate part of her neck, right below her earlobe. That led to a far more intimate fantasy as Harper's soft lips traveled around Ivy's bare shoulders, collarbone, chest, and then down to her sensitive nipples, engorged with desire and yearning to be nurtured by Harper. Within moments of her imagined touch, Ivy ached for her to take her to a place she had never been before with a woman. As the heat passed through her under the alluring plushness of her blankets, Ivy's head buzzed with a delightful lightness that carried her to a blissful place where she floated on an uncharted desire. Wrapped up in the fantasy of Harper's tempting touch and attention, Ivy's pulse spiked to brand new heights, causing her breaths to quicken and her body to quiver in ecstasy. She steadied in on the sweet spot that she imagined Harper would continue to nurture with passionate sweeps of her hot tongue over her sensitive, tingling, erogenous zones. The heat intensified. One spark created another and another, until she went into full sensory overload, panting, writhing, and moaning for more. She could no longer sustain the build-up. Wrapped up in pure pleasure, Harper Ray unknowingly delivered Ivy one of the greatest, most intense orgasms of her life. Ivy clung to the gift of that orgasm, not wanting it to wane, banking on it to stay ablaze. When it eventually subsided, she lay breathless, completely taken in by the catalyst of that orgasm. A woman who had moved her to tears the day before with her music. She closed her eyes and attempted to settle her beating heart through long, deep breaths. Eventually, Ivy landed back on Earth, taking in her room, the sun rays sprinkling through the curtains, her reality. Ivy rose and went to the bathroom. She splashed water on her face and stared deeply into the eyes of someone new, a far more interesting version of her former self from a few minutes before. "What have you done to me, Harper Ray?" She exhaled a long breath. She felt alive and refreshed, like she'd emerged from deep in the ground and inhaled fresh air for the first time in months. After showering, she headed back out to her bedroom. Harper would be arriving any time now to be interviewed for her new job as the wellness center's acoustic entertainer. The sound of a car door being slammed shut came from the driveway. Not once, not twice, 3 times. Each time the slam grew more intense. Midway through pulling her undies up under her skirt, she ran over to the window to see the fuss. Harper Ray, wearing a tight pair of blue jeans and a t-shirt, bent down beside her driver's side car door and lifted it. Body slamming against it, she stepped back and waited, her hands splayed out in front of her as if ready to catch the door, should it have fallen off its hinges. The car, a faded blue sedan with white spots on its bumpers and sides, resembled something that had been driven over landmines in a war zone. A crack stretched across her windshield above the driver's viewpoint. Harper cupped her hand over her eyes and glanced at the house. Ivy jumped backward behind her curtain. A moment later, she peeked out again. Harper's thick, dark ponytail hung at her shoulders. She was beautiful, with her ivory-colored skin and toned physique. She shifted on her tattered sneakers, as if deciding if she should get back in her car and speed away, or take a chance on the weird, flowery woman she met in a grocery store the day before. Eventually, Ivy headed toward the front door and waited. When would she knock? Knock on the damn door, Ivy whispered. When she finally did, Ivy beamed to life. She opened the door, and a set of dark eyes met hers. Harper Ray, with her little nose and messy ponytail, was adorable. So adorable. She wore a t-shirt from Bella Rose's. Ivy had one just like it. Wisps of Harper's hair sprang from her loose ponytail, as if trying to run away from her stress. Dark smudges smeared on her jawline, likely from the car door grease. Harper glanced around the front yard, pointing her eyes down at the pruned bushes that covered Ivy's front bay window. When she swept her eyes up to Ivy, everything, from her roots to her dark circles under her eyes, screamed, "Help me." Hot damn, if those 2 words didn't get Ivy's heart beating, nothing did. This is a scene from Uprooting, written by Suzie Carr, narrated by Suzie Carr.
You have been listening to Book Clips. Check out the show notes for the synopsis and buy links for this book. If you are interested in showcasing your novel, then check out the show notes for more information.